If you're hungry, spiritually, intellectually, get prepared for a buffet as you listen to Dr. Alan Keyes.
Those who forsake the law praise the wicked. Those who uphold the law resist them. Welcome to the Voice of Resistance. Here's your host, Randall Terry.
Welcome to the program, friend. It is I, your servant, Randall. Dr. Alan Keyes and I recently had the joy of doing some public speeches together in a local church here in Memphis, Tennessee. We brought our television gear with us, and they came out pretty good, so we thought might as well air them on this broadcast. I promise you, this is not only worth your time to watch, it's worth your time to watch again, all right? So remember, you can watch this on our website, thevoiceofresistance.com, where you can be strengthened and challenged and inspired, and you can become a part of the solution to get our country back into the hands of righteous men and women. Enjoy Dr. Keyes' speech.
People who come from another place and who are therefore strangers to those who live in this place, perhaps until you get to know them. So the word alien means that which is strange to you, that which is not part of you, that which is other than your identity. What could that possibly mean in terms of us? Well, to be quite frank, it means that God has filled us up with substance. And it's not just God in the abstract. It's not God flowing beard God. It's not God made up with a pumpkin smile like the God in Castaway and all of this. No, not that kind of God. There is a specific term that's used in the Declaration, referring us to the very beginning, by the way, of the biblical understanding of God. Very first thing the Bible mentions about God. In the beginning, God did what? Created. And so, in the Declaration, who do they refer to? The Creator, are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. The Creator is the one who makes you, who determines who you are in terms of your nature, of the way in which you exist, the way you're put together, the way your body is made, the way your brain functions, the way your heart functions, the way every part of your being functions. That's determined by the Creator. That's what the Declaration says. It's not a coincidence, in my opinion, that the Declaration is in that regard, it tracks exactly with the Bible. Creation of all things ascribed to God. It tracks exactly with the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, through whom, what? All things were made. Yes? And so the Declaration looks back to the Creator and says, well, the Creator is the one who made us. But these days, I think we can actually take it a step further than perhaps generations before us, because we have another sense of making and creating, even in human terms, that might help us to understand better what we're talking about when we talk about rights. Because one of the things that has really been transforming our world is what we call information technology, right? And on account of that information technology, we have computer processing machines and instruments that can then lead to all kinds of expressions of creativity. We can make movies and films and create virtual realities practically and reproduce images and other things that can practically convince you that you're there in the presence of the buildings and the warriors and the fighters. It's so graphic, it's so detailed, but what's it all about? It's all about processing bits and pieces of information in a right order that then produce a certain material result. So, in one sense, we understand today what it means that the Word would be the source of creation. Because what is a little bit of computer data? A little bit of computer data is a word that is expressed in a language understood by the computer. Sometimes it's machine language, sometimes it's one of the higher languages that are used in information technology. But what is created by our information technology is entirely created by way of the Word, yes or no? So we understand what that means, and this helps us to understand what a right is. Because if God is the creator in that sense, and he creates our being, what does he do? He informs it. He provides it with the information that is necessary in order for that way of being to continue, to perpetuate itself, to prosper. He provides us with information about how heat is going to affect us, so we should pull our hand out of a hot fire. He provides us with information about how good food smells, so we will be attracted to what we are to eat. He provides us with information about how we can perpetuate the species, so that in response to certain stimuluses that come between us, we are able to engage in the act and led to engage in the act by which human beings are perpetuated. A matter of fact, these days it would be fair to say, and scientists do say, that our body is a complex information processing unit. That's what we're about. What's one of the things that has to be done in a computer program, though, to get the outcome? You have to write programs, and programs consist of little programs, and those little programs consist of instructions that are arranged in various ways to produce the same result all the time. Those instructions are called algorithms, and they incline that at certain points, certain choices and certain activities are going to take place according to a routine. Huh? Well, that explains something, doesn't it?
Hey, everyone's been asking me, when's Unstoppable coming out on DVD? Well, it's here. And I have created my own deluxe signature version of Unstoppable that contains not only the movie, but over 5 hours of additional curriculum and study guides for your family. It's perfect for your homeschool, educational facility, small group Bible study, and family devotions. And I'm going to share with you some of the spiritual warfare that surrounded the release of this film. This box set also includes extended scenes, new music videos, the inside scoop on the whole Facebook controversy. So what are you waiting for? I made this special version with my family in mind, and I know your family will be blessed by it too. Unstoppable 2.0 Deluxe Signature Version, available only here at KurtCameron.com. I can't wait for you to experience what's inside.
What if the whole concept of rights is analogous to an algorithm that is part of our program as human beings that inclines us to do certain things which are necessary in order to preserve our lives, and also in order to preserve those lives in a way that respects the distinctive beings that we are as human beings? That's what rights are. They're information from God, instructions, as it were, that help us to act in such a way that we will live and perpetuate ourselves, that we will feed and strengthen ourselves, that we will have children and raise them up and prosper as human beings. And that program, those algorithms, are shared with us by God, endowed, as it were, as part of those things which he has done for our sake and for our good in creating us. For creation is inherently an act that is done out of loving respect for the one created. Because a free being doesn't have to create this or that. If and when that free being, which God is, creates a human being, that is an inclination of God's will to bring forth that being out of all the possibilities of creation. And so that is an expression of love in the truest possible sense. For God loved us before we got here. He loved us so that he was willing to configure the whole world in such a way that it would be possible for us to exist in it. And when we therefore appeal to those unalienable rights, we're actually appealing to the instructions that we're inclined to obey by our very nature, which lead us to do what is right for our survival, for our procreation, for our perpetuation, and for that of all humanity. Okay? He's not just looking at us as individuals. He has programmed us, and that's why procreation is so important. Procreation is the element of our individual program, our individual nature, by which God inclines us to do that which will contribute to the perpetuation of all humanity. And he does it in a way, in human form, that not only takes account of some whole vast global humanity, it takes account of that individual child that comes into the world all helpless, because he fills the human heart with an inclination to do for that child, not because of fear, not because of power, not because of gain, but because of a simple, clear inclination of the heart that reflects the love of God for our humanity as he has informed us. Isn't that beautiful? I actually think that's beautiful. I'm sorry, I go through that and I say to myself, that is lovely. That is like a symphony, as harmonious to the understanding as a symphony is upon the ear. That's what that is. But once you have stood back and taken a look at that, you realize that phrase unalienable right has to do with God's loving concern for what is right for us. And when we are inclined to do it and follow his will, we prosper. And when we don't, we engage in activities that end up, in one way or another, destroying ourselves. Now think about that. That's what government exists to secure. It exists to take the people who follow those inclinations and make sure they're going to be safe. That they can work together and do various things so that they will be protected. But then you say, I'm protected from what? What's there to be protected from? Well, in the Garden of Eden, there was nothing to be protected from, because the only other presence there that we're told of in the Scriptures, God. So if you take that for true, then you didn't have to fear God. But then suddenly Adam and Eve decided to follow one instruction. There was one instruction that Eve sort of thought was one that she didn't have to follow. She broke it, and lo and behold, the very consequences God feared came upon us. And we existed in a world then in which there was not just good, that is to say, that which was in accordance with God's will. There was also evil. We came from an understanding of things that was wholly focused on God to an understanding of things that included alternatives not chosen by God for our good. Yes? And lo and behold, one other attribute that was there because we were made in the image and likeness of God then began to cause all kinds of problems. And that is the one that some people say is the aim and end of American life, freedom. But don't you see?
We have put together what we call an online university for you. Now that's a highfalutin way of saying that we have a pretty significant library of material, books, tapes, videos that are there for you for free. Why are we doing this? Because America is desperate for new leaders, and because this material could help you to become the leader that you and God want you to be. Check it out and enjoy it.
Freedom was, at least in one understanding of it, the cause of our whole problem. We can choose. And we see examples in nature. There are insects and bees and other. They don't get the choice. They just follow the instructions. They run like a computer program. We don't. Something in us makes us in such a way that we can stand apart from the program. We can stand back from the routine that's running, and we can make a choice. We can think of ourselves as not part of a routine that goes just to that place, but what if I want to go to this one and this one and this one that are not part of the program? We can choose to do so. And that choice is, in fact, part of our nature, because that's the way God made us. He made us in his image and likeness. What is one of the most essential attributes of God? His freedom. Of course he's free, because he's the supreme being. There is no being more powerful than God. If there is none that can determine God, then God entirely determines himself, and therefore freedom is an essential attribute of God. Am I making sense? And if freedom is an essential attribute of God, and we are a reflection of God, then freedom must be reflected somewhere in our nature, and it is. But it's reflected in such a way that some people are going to choose to do what's right, and some people are going to choose to do what's wrong. And our government, according to the Declaration of Independence, wasn't established as a, contract among the gangsters, like different mafiosi rulers agreeing to divide up the territory so that they can freely wrong and oppress and defraud and murder and violate the people over whom they manage to achieve power. That competition of power, that lust after power, that ever and unceasing ambition for power after power after power, no matter who has to die, no matter who has to be destroyed, that is not the basis of America's way of life. That is the reason in fundamental terms why we are safe in saying that our republic is supposed to exist to have liberty and justice for all. Justice, meaning the assurance that righteousness will prevail. That's the aim of justice. See? And I like to use that word righteousness because it's a little bit like the word murder in the case of abortion. They don't want us to talk about righteousness. They immediately want everybody to think he's self-righteous. He means self-righteous. No, I don't. Righteousness is that which accords with right. When you exercise the right, you act righteously. When you act righteously, you act on the authority of God. When you act on the authority of God, no human authority has authority to oppose what you do. That is the meaning of liberty. That is the liberty that is supposed to prevail in our country. Now, I go through all of this in order to explain a couple of things, and it's necessary. I know it takes a little time, but I think it's essential now because we are no longer familiar with the logic of our liberty, with the logic of our Declaration of Independence, with the logic of government based on consent. And I try to lay it out because then when you look at specific issues like economics or the respect for life, you see them differently. What is economics, anyway? One of the great problems we have right now is that we have a whole class of leaders, Republican, Democrats, everybody else. They think politics exists only to deal with economic issues. Have you noticed that? If it doesn't involve money, if it's not about jobs, if it's not about wages, if it's not about material things, they say it has no part in politics. And yet, from the very foundation of America, the aim of government was not to secure power. It was to secure rights. And rights are powers exercised in accordance with what is right, as determined by the endowment of God. Yes or no? When you see that logic, you suddenly realize, oh, wait a minute. If economics is only about money, then it can't really be the preoccupation of our politics. It might be part of something we have to deal with, but our politics has to give priority to other things. I don't think that's simply true, by the way, but it's because the idea that economics is just about money is not true. Every now and again, somebody will sort of sidle up to the true meaning of the word economics, but they quickly, these days, back away because they don't want you to realize what it is. The word economics comes from the Greek, 2 words. It's a compound word. It means oikos is the first word, and nomos is the second. Nomos was a word that meant the rule or discipline that governed an object.
Does God judge nations? If so, why? What does his judgment look like? And is America under the judgment of God? I answer these questions and many others using the scriptures in my book called The Judgment of God. I encourage you to go to our website and download your own PDF and study the scriptures on the judgment of God.
Activity, whatever. Oikos was the word for home or household, place where you lived. Oikos, your home. So when we talk about economics, what are we really talking about? We're talking about that which is the primordial place where human beings live in society together, the place we call home. Who lives in that home? Well, in the first instance, the family lives there. And economics is all about that. Economics is not about money, and it's not about power, it's not about jobs. In the first instance, economics is about the strength and integrity of family life. It is about the fulfillment of our obligation in our nature to God to do that which will preserve and perpetuate the human species. And to do that, we will accept the obligation to take care of our offspring. They will accept the obligation to respect our authority insofar as we use it for the sake of their good. And in those mutual obligations and in that mutual acceptance, there will arise activities that are endowed by God's command, because that command includes our procreation and therefore supports the natural right actions that occur in the context of family life. That's the natural rights of family. Yes? So every time we deal with economics, we are really talking about, in our terms as Americans, are the natural rights of family being respected? Is the authority of parents being respected? Is the obligation of parents to care for their children being respected? Is the obligation of children to understand and accept and revere the authority of their parents being accepted? Is the obligation of society to work with families on that basis of respect for their rights, is it being respected? And in our society, I have to tell you, we have used the bludgeon of godless, materialistic economics, disregarding the natural rights of family in order to create structures that in fact are aimed at dissolving and destroying the natural rights of family, and with them the God-endowed right of our own perpetuation that the family actually exemplifies for the whole human race. In doing so, of course, we have now reached an extreme. And that extreme is perfectly exemplified by what my friend Randall Terry was talking about. In the first instance, we have the notion that it can somehow be understood to be lawful that you should exterminate the life that represents the perpetuation of humanity. I would think that without any thought, really, an individual with a little willingness to look at it logically would realize, oh, wait a minute, that child in the womb represents the faculty of procreation whereby the whole species is perpetuated. If we disrespect the life of the child in the womb, we are not just assaulting the child, we are assaulting humanity itself. Isn't that pretty clear? See, I've thought through that logic many times in my life, and I don't understand how we can miss that. Abortion isn't just about the individual child, and it can't be just about the individual mother. Abortion has to be about the fate of humanity itself. For if we take the protection of respect away from that life in the womb, if it can be abused in all the different ways that human passion and greed and ambition and convenience and fear can think of to abuse it, then we are not securing the right to life. We are making life the most insecure commodity on the planet, and that is what it has become. And so we look at this, and we see what is being done to the life of the child in the womb, and we recognize that it is a crime against humanity. It's literally what is taking place. Now let me ask a question. Are we Americans renowned because we believe that it's possible to make crimes against humanity lawful under law? I would say just the opposite. After World War II, one of the things we held against the Nazi regime was that they passed laws that violated the tenets and premises of the natural law that ought to govern our respect for all humanity. That's where the phrase crime against humanity came into vogue. That's why the Nuremberg trials and things of that kind took place. We prosecuted them because they had passed laws that actually made crimes against humanity lawful. I say we have passed.
Well, friend, I hope that you really let those words get down into your heart and soul. Child killing, euphemistically known as abortion, is not simply an assault on the baby. It is an assault on all of humanity. And I had a preacher friend say once that it's a satanic assault on God himself. Because Jesus said, let the little children come to me, for to such belongs the kingdom of heaven. He said that whatever you do to one of the least of these, my brothers, you do to me. So the child killers are actually assaulting all of humanity, and it's an attack on God himself because we are made in the image of God. We need to be a part of the resistance that brings it to an end.